Hey everybody, it's Mike Vardy here, and welcome to the second episode of the Weekly Finish. I'm hoping that this is going to help you finish the week strong. You can see that I've got a little bit of a different setup this week. I am using my Mevo camera, which you can't really see right now, but I'm really excited because I've hooked up my different lighting. I've done some stuff that I haven't done in a really long time when it comes to this kind of thing. I've got my lav mic here, so you're gonna be able to hear me a little bit better. I've got my my coffee, my water. I'm all set to go. I hope you are too. Whether you're watching this live on Facebook Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time, or whether you're watching this on YouTube, which it goes up the following week, usually between the Wednesday and the Friday. Wednesday's my audio video day, so normally it goes up on the Wednesday, which gives you a little bit of extra time to finish the week strong. Plus, if you're in one of those countries where when it goes up Wednesday, here it's Thursday there, then you're close enough to the Friday anyway. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you're live here, I will have the ability to answer some things in the chat room during the Facebook Live. I'm still kind of experimenting with how I'm going to be doing this. Right now I'm using my iPhone to kind of navigate the cameras, and you can see that I can, again, move things over if I want really quickly. I don't have anything on the whiteboard today, but I will in the future. So you'll want to tune in for that for future episodes. You can see that I've got my handy dandy script stuff ready if I need it, because I've got some articles I might want to cite with you today. I've got my coffee here. I've got a book, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, my water, all that stuff. And of course, you've got me right here, which I'll zoom out a little bit for so you can get a little bit more of a wider shot of me. Okay? So, let's get started. What I do, just to give you a sense of what I do every morning now, and I want to thank David Taylor Klaus for this, because I met David in 2016 in Atlanta at the NAPO conference, the NAPO annual conference, which is the National Association of Professional Organizers. Their 2017 conference just happened in Pittsburgh as we're recording this about a couple of weeks ago. And he gave me a deck of cards. Excuse me while I'm engorge on some coffee. So what he did was he has these cards right here, which I'll zoom in on. I'll turn over there, and we'll kind of zoom in a little bit tighter on. All right, so here's the card, okay? And on one side, of course, is his business information, but then on the other is a quote. So every morning, as part of my morning routine now, when I come downstairs to do my reading and such, I actually read one of these quotes. And then I flip it up. I've got it on like a business card stand, which you can't really see from here, but it's on my windowsill. And I can actually, kind of like a motivational quote to start the day. It's a full deck of cards, too. Really smart idea. So, David, thanks for giving these to me. I'm going to read today's quote for you. So we'll come back out to here. All right. There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true, and the other is to refuse to accept what is true. So let me repeat that. There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to accept what is true. We see that a lot today in so many different things. And this is by Soren Kierkegaard. So thanks, David, for this. And it's actually a great way to start off this week's episode of the Weekly Finish. Because a lot of us, people that I talk to, they feel like they can't get everything done in the work week, in the span of the work week. So whether or not you are a solopreneur, whether you work for someone for a 9 to 5, you feel like you can't get that job done for the course of the week. And so the work bleeds into the evenings and the weekends. And for most of us, actually for all of us, that's a problem. Because we don't have the harmony between work and life otherwise. And it's interesting. I was talking to my wife about this because we've seen this firsthand in the kind of things we do, where you've got certain people who are very much like, I am the 9 to 5, and then when I'm done my job is my job, and then when I'm done my job, I go home and I'm with my family. And I think that's a fantastic attitude, but sometimes it can go too far the other way as well. And we where you just punch in the clock, going in, doing your deal, and getting out, no ambition. Again, it's not for everybody, but that's one way to approach it. But there's another area where people are just so go, fast, now, 24/7, that it could lead to burnout, and it can also irritate the colleagues around you. It can irritate, the people that you are hanging out with. And I've had this when I was first starting my business. I was a bit more, especially back when I worked at Costco. Even though I was I was a manager and I could leave. When I wasn't there were elements of me that were thinking about it, and so that's something that I want to address today is how to reclaim that lost time, because I've done a really good job of that over the past few years to do that, and I want to give you some tactics today that'll help you do that as part of the weekly finish this week. But I also want to touch a little bit on something that happened this week, which I wrote about in the Productivityist Weekly. So this book, which I don't really need to zoom in on because you can see it. David Sedaris, Let's Explore Diabetes with Owls. Okay, so David Sedaris is one of my favorite authors, and this actually relates to the harmony and the ability to kind of step back and do something cool. I wrote about this in the weekly newsletter. I'll expand upon it a little bit here. If you get the Productivityist Weekly, you would have seen this in your inbox already, and if you did, great. So the deal with going, he came to Victoria to do a reading, and my friend Terry, who thank you very much, Terry, for inviting me, said, hey, let's go see him. And actually 2 authors this week I've gone to see. I've gone to see Dave Asprey within a week span. Dave Asprey a week ago today I saw, and then I saw David Sedaris, 2 very different authors, 2 very different writers, 2 very different people, in within a week of each other. And so I don't know if you've ever been to a book reading before. I really haven't been to a full-on book reading, like where an author stands up and reads. And I've been to several book expos and stuff, but I've never really, gone to those things. But I did this time. And, the tickets weren't inexpensive. I mean, it was like a $70 ticket. But, how often does a New York Times bestselling author of his caliber come to Victoria? I would wager to say this is probably going to be the only stop he has here, maybe ever. So I went to the show. Brilliant stuff. Great writer. I've heard him on Audible before, so I read him as well. I've heard his voice, so it was nice to see that in person. So after the show, he said, I'm going to be outside signing books. He's got a new book coming out in the next few weeks. And but I picked up this one because essay. And I'll get to what that essay is in a minute. And actually, I'll tell you where you can find it as well. Perfect. Just getting some updates here. I'm not seeing any chat. If you want to chat, that's great. There's a few of you on here, so that's fantastic. So I went to see. I got to the front of the line. It was about an hour to an hour and a half before I actually got to the front of the line. And when we got up there, first off, he thought that Terry and I were a couple, and I think that kind of bummed him out at the end when he realized that we weren't a couple. And we kind of joked, Terry and I joked about this afterwards. We said, maybe that's when we were dismissed, when he felt that the ruse was up, and that we were just friends. And so, but nonetheless, we walked up to the desk, and he said hello to both of us. He offered Terry the cornbread that was on the table that that was the last of his dinner, his late night dinner. She said, no, I'm fine. Meanwhile, I had said to Terry, I'm getting hungry. On the way home, can we go through a drive-through or something? Because I'm famished. And he said, do you want my cornbread? And I said, sure. And I had like that brief hesitation of, do I really want to be the guy that takes the last of his cornbread? But apparently I was the guy that wanted to take the last bit of his cornbread, so I did. And then he started to talk to Terry, talked to me, we started going through it. And then he started just, when he asked me what I did, I said, frankly, I'm a writer, and which is true. But as a writer, and anyone who's a writer out here, it's very challenging to, you don't want to be that person, at least I don't, that says, oh, I'm a writer, and I'm wondering, how do you manage to do that? I didn't want to go down that territory. Because he was, I can't imagine how many times a day, even in that reading or in that autograph session, how many times he was being asked or told, hey, I'm a writer, and here's could I send you a manuscript to read, or can I, I didn't want to be that person. And maybe there aren't that many out there, but I've seen it happen before in other readings and other situations. So anyway, he just stopped dead when I said I was a writer, and he asked what I wrote about. And I said, time management and productivity, because that's the easiest way to kind of put it. And then he leaned back, And he started to say, I'll zoom in because this is kind of how it looked to me. And he said, the internet, it's bad and it's not bad. It's got lots of distractions, and and he just started to talk and wax about the internet. And I felt good because it's like, okay, great. This guy even sees this stuff and he runs into it. We talked about like how I don't read nonfiction, and we went into that when we were in our writing habits. But during this whole conversation, after we signed the book and stuff, I walked away and I thought, what? I wasn't going to go to this. Like hours before, I had said, I'm not done my work yet. I need to. Maybe I should just say, Terry, you know what? Take somebody else. Take another person. I'll pay for them because it's a little late. If they want to throw me a little bit of money, that's fine. There's lots of people that would have loved to have gone, I'm sure. But I decided, and I'm sure Ann would have been like, hey, if we can get the $70 back for those tickets, yeah, don't go. But I decided, you know what? This guy's not going to be here, and there are those moments, like going to see a movie or something like that, where you need that respite, that break. And it was, again, it was going on at 7:30 at night. It's not like the workday was going on, even though you all know that I'm a bit of a night owl. So I went. And it wasn't something that at the time I felt that I needed to do, but I wanted to do. But ultimately, when I left that place, it was exactly what I needed to do. Because it signaled the end of the day for me in a lot of ways, but it also provided me some inspiration, some insights, and some knowledge that I wouldn't have got in any other situation other than having a conversation with a New York Times bestselling author and learning that, and I mean, again, we know this as creatives, as business owners, is that those at the top or those that are at that success level have the same problems that we have, just maybe in a different order, in a different scale. And balance and harmony and integrating that work-life thing is part of it. I mean, one of his essays he talked about when he was on stage was about having to sign, and I have not had to do this, but he had to sign 5,000 basically like boilerplates for his book. They're inserts, so he could have signed copies. And he's in Hawaii while this is happening, and it's a beautiful, a beautiful day. And his partner Hugh had said, why are you we're in Hawaii, do that. And so he went for a walk but the lines get blurred. And this leads me to my favorite essay by David Sedaris. It's called Laugh Kookaburra. And actually, since I have it here, I might even try to find the part that he talks about. Let's see, it's page 74. I think I know this off by heart now. Yes, maybe it's not 74. It is, here we go. Sorry, it's page 90. It's a long essay. So, anyway, we talked about there's this stove, and he talks about the stove in this piece. And this essay is about perspective and stuff. And there's a link he wrote for this for the New Yorker as well. But this woman that he was with, Pat, who's a guide, this is when he was in Australia, basically said that she was at a management seminar, and she told David and Hugh the story about how there's 4 burners. 1 burner represents your family, 1 is your friends, 3rd is your health, and the 4th is your work. But she said that the idea is that the gist, and this is a direct quote, she said was that in order to be successful, you have to cut off 1 of your burners. And in order to be really successful, you have to cut off 2. And there's been deviations of this talked about. Randy Zuckerberg's talked about this, Mark Zuckerberg's sister. And I think when it comes to finishing the week strong, that you need to figure out if you have those 4 burners going: family, health, friends, work. I think, and this is my belief, is that there's no reason why you can't have all 4 burners not going, but you can use all 4 burners. You can have the 4 burners. And the difference is when do you turn off certain ones and focus on 2 of them. Okay? So if you want to be successful, then you can exchange, and I think this is what's missed there, is the idea was, and I might be wrong, but this is my interpretation, is that you have to leave 1 burner completely off. Not true. I think that if you are going into the end of the week, so today is Friday, and you've got friends, family, health, and work, you should turn off that work burner from Friday at whatever time you decide to until Monday or until Sunday night, let's say. And there's a way to do that that is effective. And Friday is the perfect day to do this. And the first thing is you just need to plan ahead. Now, planning ahead is I mean, this is not new to you. It shouldn't be. But when I say plan ahead, I mean literally at the end of your day, whether it is if you run your own business and you shut down at 4 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock, or maybe you normally shut down at 7, give yourself, a good 60 to 120 minutes, or 1 hour to 2 hours of time to just set yourself up for the following week. You need to set aside that time, whether that is you horizontally block it, so you say, hey, you know what, from 3 to 5 or from 5 to 7 or from whatever to whatever. And again, this doesn't have to be Friday. If your weekend, if you work different shifts and your week starts on a Thursday and then your weekend's on a Monday or whatever, just set aside that time to say, okay, look, this week is done. And you literally have to reconcile that with yourself, because you can't possibly get everything that you need or want to do done in a day, a week, a month, whatever, because there's always going to be something. We're explorers as human beings. We're always looking for the next thing to dive into, whether it's learning something new, whether it's getting better at something, whether it's building something, whether it's getting through that last email, whatever it is. We're always looking to move forward. And that time doesn't, the quantified version of time, days, weeks, hours, months, whatever, doesn't reconcile with that. If we're moving forward, I mean, think about it. If you are thinking about, traveling, time moves on whether you want it to or not. So I noticed this when we were in the Philippines, if we stayed in one spot for any extended period of time, our feelings were very different than in another spot. So think about it this way. Friday, if today is in fact your end of week, stop and again, kind of like when you're trying to change your sleep habits, don't say, okay, that's it, 2 hours, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, start by taking a half hour and maybe staying a half hour later at the office or spending a half hour later at work. And then slowly shift back. My friend Chris Ducker, who ran the conference at Tropical Think Tank, he has no work Fridays. Doesn't work today. So he just doesn't work on Fridays. Again, he's put himself in a position to do that. You may not have, and I certainly haven't. I'm working today. So I think that's something that you should, and then when you sit down to have that plan, there's specific things that you should do. And this doesn't have to be like a traditional review or anything like that. We can build into that later. And there's ways to review that makes this this process even less friction-oriented or frictionless, or more frictionless. Number one, look at your calendar for the next week. Look at that like as soon as you are getting ready to tie up the current week. So go beyond the Saturday and Sunday and look at Monday to Sunday for the following week. And just get a sense of, hey, what does this week look like? Now, if you already are looking at the next week and when you're looking at it, you say, oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed with meeting and things like that, like make note of that. Say, you know what, this week is jammed. Like I've got 3 meetings a day, like make note of it. And then, this is the idea of planning ahead. Chronicle that. Capture that. Capture your thoughts surrounding that. As you're using this on pen and paper or whatever, or maybe you can have an audio recording going of it. You could say to yourself, okay, there are way too many meetings next week. I need to make sure that the following week, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, don't have this. So I need to try to figure out if I can limit the amount of meetings that I have, if you have that control. Number 2, I have these appointments that I'm doing. I better make sure that I don't schedule appointments, like 4 appointments that I've scheduled. Let's be a little bit more reasonable about them. So it's about just stepping back and getting perspective, because in order to move forward in the right direction, sometimes you have to step back. Examples on my front, and I can talk about this from both an office perspective and from a solopreneur perspective, a gentleman working from home. So, podcasting. I only schedule podcast interviews on Wednesdays because that's my audio-video day. Unless I want to interview somebody, in which case I will go outside of that spectrum. But if someone wants to talk to me, they need to meet with me on those specific days. If I want to meet with them, then I will reach out to them and give them options, or I will find out what their options are, and I will give them plenty of lead time. So if I'm having somebody like a friend of mine, Jeff Goins, or Sean Stevenson, all of whom are going to be on the podcast, and I want them to be on my show, I say, when can you be on the show? In the next month or so. Like, what time? How much time do you have in the next month or so? That way I'm giving them plenty of lead time. And if they say, hey, Mike, you know what, I can't be on the show till June 1st, I can't record with you till June 1st, then I can look at June 1st and say, how are these times? But if you say, hey, can you do next week, and you didn't look at your own week, and you didn't think about their week, that's going to be a problem. Whereas if somebody wants something with you, you can set up those boundaries and say, you know what, you want to meet with me? Well, here's a link. I don't know, and this is a super easy thing to do. There's Acuity scheduling, there's Calendly, there's all these things. You could say, I don't want to meet with you until, I want to make sure that you have this block of time. I don't want to say no to you. I don't want to say yes to you either. I don't like saying no to you. I don't want to say yes to you because I will, in that moment of weakness, my willpower will dissipate. So have those boundaries in place so that way the weeks beyond next week, which is the one you're looking at, are a little bit less cluttered. Another great way to do this is to, of course, theme your days, which I've talked about in my book, The Productivityist Playbook, and on many other instances, my Skillshare class, all that stuff. So that way you have themes so your brain kind of aligns these things, but that's another thing to do. And then have so once you've done that, then look at Friday, then assess the rest of your tasks on Friday and figure out where they fit into the next week. And yeah, you're going to be, as you start doing this, you're going to be busy, but it's going to put you in a more proactive state, okay? And once you're done all this, have a shutdown routine. Like, literally have a shutdown routine. So when you leave the office, when you leave whether it's a home office, like, have it so that, like, when I leave the office on Friday, so today, I will shut down my computer, like, literally shut it down. And I will shut my office door, so that way no one, if I'm not in here and the door's shut, it means that the office is closed. Like, create a shutdown routine, whether it's cleaning your desk, whatever. Like, create that shutdown routine. And your brain will familiarize yourself with that. It's kind of like making the bed in the morning. That small act, when you make your bed, it sets the wheels in motion. This closes the shop down. It's kind of like these little steps that you take that fire all the synapses to make sure that your week has come to a close. Because if you go into your home office on a weekend and you see that your desk is clean where normally it wouldn't be, you're like, oh, right, it's the weekend. I'm going into a fresh, clean slate. Or your computer's powered off. You're going to be like, oh, why is my computer powered off? Oh, right, because this is the weekend. I should not be. There better be a good reason why I'm hopping on right now. Okay? So there's that to consider, right? Those are ways that you can kind of map your weekend and get your weekend ahead of, is to be proactive on Friday or whatever day your weekends, okay? And then the next thing that you want to do is just make sure that you have the ability to create some boundaries around, that you'll respect around the weekend. So, for example, and this can be hard for some of you, it's hard for me, don't answer your emails on weekends. Unless, I'll put the unless there because some of you are going to be like, I can't do that. Unless they are from someone that you absolutely need to answer it from. Okay? And if they are, don't respond right away. So, if you get an email from your boss on a Saturday afternoon, you can read it and respond to it, but I would not respond to it within moments of them sending it. I would have a set time maybe where you check email on the weekends. Maybe it's during a time where you know the kids and you are not going to be, busy. Maybe it's going to be, but make it later in the day. So not first thing because it's going to weigh on you all day long, number one. And when they do email, like when they do contact you via email, you got to remember they're probably not, and they shouldn't be, waiting by their email inbox for your response. They're going to get a notification, sure. But once you set up that relationship that I'm going to respond to email at 11 in the morning on a Saturday or 1 o'clock in the afternoon or whenever, or first thing in the morning on a Saturday, you've now created this pattern that says when you email me, I will respond. Doesn't matter when, doesn't matter how, doesn't matter. You've created this pattern. And that is a dangerous pattern to establish because it then says that you are available at any given time. Because it's not just what you send in the message that counts. It's what's the subtext around it. So if someone sends you a message at 3 in the morning, because they're in, let's say they're on the East Coast, so it's 6 in the morning there, and you respond at 6 in the morning, they're going to say, oh, look, Mike's up. That means I can email him at 6 a.m. and he's going to respond. They won't think that consciously, but subconsciously they will. So you need to establish some new boundaries, and then you need to respect them. And you can go ahead and inform your boss. I mean, there's this happened this week, and it's about reclaiming, time and quiet. And I wouldn't necessarily go about it this way, probably because I'm Canadian. But and I'm not a diva either. But Steve Harvey on the Steve Harvey show, they're going into the last season of it, and he sent out a memo and it leaked. And it probably leaked from somebody who doesn't like him very much, because it basically said, listen, if you want to meet with me, you need to schedule an appointment. Do not stop me in the hallway. Do not knock on my door. Do not just walk into my dressing room. You need to block out time for me. And he later clarified that he used to have a real great open door policy, but people were just abusing it. And so what he did was he sent this memo out, and it was pretty terse. Like, if you've read it, it was terse. You don't need to be that terse, especially if you're not the boss. You certainly don't want to be that terse. But what you can do is say, hey, listen, hey, Rob, I know you're my boss, but I need you to know that in order for me to really make sure that I'm at my best come Monday morning, that my weekends are as only deal with anything that is urgent. And if it's urgent, you have my phone number, just text me, because if from this is important, this needs to be dealt with now. Whereas an email doesn't tell me that. An email just open my email inbox, messages in there, the dozens, it's going to get lost in the shuffle. And it's also going to create anxiety around those other emails, because it's actually, there has been some science around that when you open your email and you see it there, it's that Pavlovian response. So those are things that you can do right now to start reclaiming your weekend. Number one, plan ahead for the week to come, and set aside some time to do that on Friday. I'm not saying do it a weekly review. What I'm saying is actually to do a better version of that review, make sure you set aside some time every day, if you could do that, to journal, to chronicle your day. So when that Friday rolls around, you can look at that first. And that's part of what I call the rapid review, is to read those journal entries. And you can do that every week, every 2 weeks, it doesn't matter. And say, oh, well, Monday I was here and now Friday I'm here. So what didn't I get done? What do I need to make sure I keep track of? And using a good digital task app or project management tool will definitely help with this. Using something like that, something to track that would be helpful. And then number two, set those boundaries, communicate them if you feel you need to. And if you don't feel you can, and you need to do it in a more of a surreptitious manner, maybe with customers or something like that, then do so. And it's easy to set these boundaries up with people you've never contacted before. Like if you go into a new job environment, you can set these boundaries on your own and then see if they're going to disturb them. But if you've been in an environment for a long time where you've been like call and response and yes ma'am, yes sir, right away sir, you're going to have to fix that, because you can't reclaim your weekends back. Because even if you don't respond to those emails, even if you don't, your part of your brain's going to go, is this okay? Is this okay? And of course it's okay. It's not healthy otherwise. And then the last thing I'm going to say to you to reclaim your weekends is, I talked about journaling. Journal on your weekends. Take those pictures that you're going to take and put them on Instagram and Facebook. Put them in a journal application like Day One or Journey, or Evernote. Like, write in a paper journal if you want. It doesn't matter, but chronicle those moments. There's that app Chatbooks that's $8. I mean, and it's a funny commercial if you've not seen it on Facebook. But create some memories around those weekends so that those kind of usurp the feelings of anxiety that you might be having when you are taking those weekends off. Okay? We're coming to the end. We're at the end of the show. Any questions or feedback, I'd love to hear from you. In the Facebook Live, I'll go through the comments and answer those as soon as I can. On YouTube, of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll deal with comments there. And next week, I'm going to talk about something that is something I really enjoyed digging into, and we haven't really talked about it yet. And what I want to do is every 4 episodes, I want to do a Q&A, so we're building up to this. But next week, I'm going to talk about your calendar and what your calendar is actually good for and what it's not good for, and how to maybe use your calendar more effectively so that you can do more of what we talked about today. So thanks so much for joining me on the Weekly Finish. I really appreciate it. I'll be back every Friday 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. But until next time, I hope you finish the week strong. And this is Mike Vardy, me, from Productivityist, reminding you to stop guessing and start going. Take care and have a great weekend.